Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today I am very excited to share with you about the new CTC Portal and the new cloud shared licensing system that's in that portal. As always, of course, our webinars are recorded and that will be uploaded to our YouTube channel very shortly after this webinar, and of course those of you in here will be notified as soon as that happens. And also, as always, if you have questions, when you have questions, I encourage you to throw them into the questions window. That's actually one of the big benefits of attending these webinars live. You get your questions answered live. I do try to answer those questions while I'm going through topics, but if I can't fit it in directly, I will absolutely have a huge Q&A session saved for the end as well. So certainly stick around for that. You might get some fantastic information out of the questions that come up and the answers that come up. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, here at CTC, we have been very hard at work building a new website. We've been building a new website built in with a custom customer portal and many other new features, including cloud shared licensing. Now, those of you who are already CTC HIVE users, that's also baked into this new portal. And for those of you who perhaps have sent us questions in support directly, you'll also notice there is a support portal inside of this area as well. So all this is built into a single coordinated place for you to go. No more going to our website for some information and some downloads into a Hive portal for different stuff and other areas for other stuff. We wanted to build this all into one location. And now that this is live, as of today, we feel that you're going to want to know all about these features and have some firsthand knowledge to understand exactly how you can take advantage of this and exactly how you can begin leveraging this on your screen or in your companies. So also, I'm going to be talking about the features and benefits of kind of why we developed the portal the way we did, why we've kind of put the features in here as we have, and all those features that you will have directly at your fingertips. And I'm talking about some of the features and benefits of this, and then also a little bit about how you can start to take advantage of this as well. So with that, let me introduce to what the learning objectives for today are going to be. We're going to be talking about the new portal's general features, just kind of going over some of the general stuff on the new site, the new portal, some of the controls. I'll show that to you live. We're going to talk about what is cloud shared licensing and why it matters. Where I'm also going to demonstrate cloud shared licensing and how it works and kind of what that means for you and your users. And then I'm also going to do a little bit of discussion, very lightly, about implementing cloud shared licensing, that license allocation directly in the portal. Now, in 2 weeks, we have a follow-up webinar to this that goes way deeper for those of you who are going to be actively implementing cloud shared licensing here soon. We want to make sure that you know exactly how to do all of the deep, controls for administration. Today, I'm going to lightly go over it. We'll go deeper then, but I want to introduce you to it today. So first off, let me go through an introduction here to the new portal. So I'm going to pull forward my web browser here. I'm in Chrome, doesn't really matter the browser, but this is the brand new ctcsoftware.com website. You can see that link up here, ctcsoftware.com. Of course, it has all the information for, all the things on our site, all the banners, all the fun stuff. We've reorganized our tool collections over here a little bit for you, so it's a little easier for you to navigate and leverage. In fact, if I go into something like the BIM project suite right here, you'll notice the ability to purchase directly from this site. You'll notice some descriptions of the suite as a whole. Down here in the free tools and licensed tools areas, you can get specific descriptions about the tools instead of a huge scrolling long page. But I want to show you something very specific that we think you're going to really appreciate. Down here at the very bottom of the page, on each of the product pages, and also if you go directly into resources here at the top, we've baked into this site on purpose for your use, and because you've asked for this, an ROI calculator, a return on investment calculator. We want you to realize the potential investment and return on that investment that you can be making and realizing in your firms through your daily workflows. And we want you to understand some of what these tools can do and how you can potentially talk internally about why you should be doing certain things. So I'm going to go directly to the ROI calculators, the same as the ones in the bottom of the product pages here. But in here, let me just pick something as an example, okay? Quick example. I'm going to choose a building example here, and I'm going to choose a specific task in the building realm that might make sense, something that you might be doing on somewhat of a regular basis, like updating and correcting portions of your family library. Now, looking through this here, you'll notice that on average, we estimate that people spend 30 minutes per family doing general repairs. And on average every year, people kind of generally update about 500 families. And if one of you is responsible for this, there's time that's allocated to that, about 250 total hours of time allocated. And if your billable rate happens to be in the $100 an hour range, that has a cost to the company of about $25,000. Now the suite, that one suite, the BIM Manager suite that has a tool that helps automate a lot of this process, costs way less than that. Very specifically, we think that with the CTC tool, and this is being very generous, it's about a minute per family instead, which gives you a time savings of about 241 hours of work. In fact, it's even more because you're not going to babysit the process while it happens. But if you did, that would still equate to about a $24,000 savings. Now, let's just say you had more families and you're like, well, Sean, I want to go through and do all of my families. Maybe I got 4,000 in my library. And you know, maybe my billable rate at the firm is $150 an hour or whatever. You can immediately realize what that return on your investment would be if you were to buy the BIM Manager suite right away. So if I go into the BIM Manager suite here, let me go to my products page directly, BIM Manager suite, you'll notice that this is a $900 a year tool for licensing. So this is live today. You should be able to get access to this today and be able to leverage these tools immediately, right? In Revit 2023 and, well, basically as far back as Revit 2019. All right, so that's one of the major features on this site. Additionally, if you go over here to the top right, notice how in the account area, I'm already signed in. If I wasn't, when I clicked on this, it would let me log in. But when I click on this directly, in here, you'll notice that for those of you who are HIVE users, this is going to look very reminiscent. This is all of my HIVE administration, my dashboard, my CMS management, projects management, HIVE requests, users and groups. That's all the same, but there's two new features built into this as well. You'll notice I have the ability to manipulate my licensing for my organization. And you can see I can tally up all of the licenses that I actually have access to. I could expand out the BIM project suite right here and kind of see that I have no licenses currently in use, but I have 8 active available licenses in my cloud shared system. So that's pretty fantastic. You can kind of see that. You also have access to any support that perhaps you have directly with CTC. This is more important for those of you who are outside the US, Canada, and Australia, because you don't have a local reseller to partner with, where in the other 3 countries that I mentioned, US, Canada, and Australia, New Zealand, 4 countries, we do have reseller partners, and you're probably going directly to them anyway. But you do have the option here, if you need to, for whatever reason, to use our support system directly. And your reseller partners, if you do use this, can see this as well. All right, so that's just a really quick introduction to the portal. The main portion of the website is very similar to all the things we've had before, but those product page redesigns and that ROI calculator and access to this portal directly is pretty key. So that's the big thing here. Now, I do want to give you a bit of an introduction to cloud shared licensing. I want to dig in a little deeper in a moment here and actually show it to you in use, but first, I want to kind of introduce you to what and why this is and explain some of the things that I'm pretty sure you're going to have questions on while I go through this. So first of all, what is cloud shared licensing? Really, it enables the management of your licenses from the cloud. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory in the name as far as the name describes, but I want to be very clear about one of the major features. Instead of named users, okay, this is not named users for our cloud shared licensing. This is a license pool. Think of it more like network licensing, but administered from the cloud, okay? Now this is built on HIVE's backbone. So again, I keep mentioning this and you'll hear me say this a few times. For those of you who are already using HIVE, you're already familiar with a lot of these controls. For those of you who aren't, that's perfectly fine. It's very easy to set this up. but it is built on the Hive backbone. Those of you who do maybe want to start using Hive or looking at Hive, you're already be ready to go using this as well as your other CTC licensing. And as you just saw here, it's built directly into the CTC portal and the main website. It's all in one place. Now, these licensing concepts aren't really anything new. They're new to CTC, but they're not really new to you because other companies like Microsoft, Autodesk, Adobe, they already have some variant of cloud-based licensing. But again, I want to be clear, this is named user, not, this is a pool of licenses for our main suites, not named users like Microsoft, Autodesk, and Adobe tend to do. Now, all of our 2023 CTC products are cloud license enabled, cloud shared license enabled. With the exception of Hive, of course, it already was cloud enabled, and it is a named user, and I'll mention that again a little bit later on. So let's talk about why those of you who already have CTC licensing today may want to consider migrating over to the cloud shared licensing system. And to be clear, you're still able to do your standalone licensing. You are still able to do your network licensing if you want to. But if you wanted to migrate into this new cloud shared system because of some of the benefits you see today, let's start talking about that because I think you're going to find a lot of benefits here. There's 5 major points. I'm going to go a little deeper on each of these in a moment here. First of all, your infrastructure is greatly simplified. Your licenses can be instantly allocated. There's no waiting on IT for some of this. The suite and tool reporting is coming very, very soon for you and is immediately being tracked so you can understand more about are your team members leveraging these tools or are they not? So you can understand, like, am I realizing the return on my investment or am I not? Do I need to do more training and more implementation or what's going on? Like with the other licensing methods, you don't see that. Also, for those of you who are interested in trying our tools out, who maybe aren't using some of these tools and you want to, maybe you just saw that manager suite tool, the family processor, and you were like, hey, that sounds really cool. I want to try that. Well, if you try it out, it's a little tricky sometimes to do trials and sometimes needing to extend some of those trials and switching over to paid licensing. That can be kind of a trick sometimes. And so we're going to talk in depth about how that can be mitigated with the cloud shared licensing. And also just in general, CTC is trying to modernize ourselves to stay in line with the rest of industry so that you can feel comfortable leveraging these tools and licensing and controlling them like the rest of industry. So we'll talk a bit more about that. First of all, let's talk about the infrastructure and the simplification there and why this really matters. For those of you on standalone licensing, you probably noticed that the licensing needs to be micromanaged individually on individual computers for both activation and deactivation. There's no automatic way to do this. And the problem is, depending on how your computers are set up, it could sometimes unintentionally devalidate your license because of the hardware fingerprint. You connect into a new, say, network interface connection. Maybe you're using a docking station for your laptop and you plug into the actual network. Well, that could sometimes, in some cases, in some environments, cause problems and deactivate a license unintentionally, and then you have to activate it. What this turns into then is overactivation. Maybe your hard drive fails and you can't deactivate, and you got to get a new computer and you got to reinstall that stuff, all over, or whatever the case may be. And then again, it wasn't deactivated, so now you're running into activation issues, and that's frustrating for you. And we don't want you to have to deal with that. This cloud shared system will completely do away with that. Network licensing, similarly, requires you to do something specific. You have to install a service on an internal server in your office, or a cloud server if you set that up. But you need to manage those license files annually, manually. If IT doesn't update a license file, the big problem is users lose access or never get access in the first place. And that can be really frustrating too. You've paid for a tool, you want to use it, and for whatever reason, IT is slow or doesn't quite get things set up right, or the infrastructure and the network isn't quite working right, or people need to VPN in and it's causing problems. That's not fun. And that doesn't really help you be more efficient. Again, with CSL, with the cloud shared licensing, all of this goes away 100%. As long as you have internet access, and we all do because we're using BIM 360, and for those of you using Hive, again, same thing. As long as you've got the internet access, you as BIM managers can allocate those licenses immediately and they can acquire them. And if need be to detach from the network for a while, they can borrow a license just like you can with network licensing and go offline for a bit. Not a problem. This infrastructure is purpose-built to be easier for all of you and for both the end users and the administrators. Now, I mentioned this a couple of times. This is instant allocation. So right now today, you add users to a group in Hive, and those groups, they provide access to libraries. Well, in this cloud shared licensing system, those exact same groups, or potentially additional groups if you want to make them, they can provide access to product licenses. And it's an immediate thing. Users are defined. You know what company they belong to. They belong to yours. You put them in a user group like everyone and give them access to the BIM project suite license, and immediately that license is ready for them to use. And you can control this from any web-enabled device. Say somebody goes into a meeting and they leave their computer up, they leave a CTC tool open, which actually happens pretty commonly these days. People are using our tools for daily workflows all the time. And for whatever reason, you need to revoke that license. Well, this is an instant action. You don't have to wait for IT to figure out how to use the Reprise License Manager system on the server and wait for that to happen. At that point, the person's probably out of the meeting, right? In this case, from your iPhone, from your Android phone, your tablet, your kid's Chromebook, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got a web browser, you can sign into this portal and you can revoke a license if you need to, or reallocate whatever you need. It's instantaneous, and there's no need to involve IT for any of this. Now, additionally, since this is tied in directly to the cloud and directly to a network licensing system, we are intentionally tracking the checkout borrow of licenses immediately so that you can retrieve that later. Now, in the near future phase of this, we're not launching this today, day one, when this is live, but the information is being tracked, but you'll be able to actually see how your users are leveraging your licensing. When are they using it? Are they using it? How frequently are you running into a maximum number of licenses? Do you need more? Maybe, do you need fewer, right? The goal here is that we are opening up the books for you to be able to see internally in your company the usage, which is something we can't do with standalone or network licensing. It just isn't possible. Now, we are tracking this immediately. As soon as you begin leveraging cloud shared licensing, that data is being logged so that when those reports become available, you'll immediately see that historic data from the cloud shared system. And again, the whole reason for that is that you can realize how you're using your licenses so you can understand, are you getting the return on investment that you think you're supposed to be getting? We think you are. We want you to know that you are so that you can continue to implement and continue to use more and more of the tools internally at your firm and continue to be more productive. Now, this doesn't affect quite as many of you, but for those it does affect, we want to be clear about this. Currently, the suites only have trials for 14 days, and it uses a standalone system, or if for some reason you needed to do this on a virtual machine environment, or you want an extended license, we can sometimes leverage the Reprise License Manager. But this is kind of a pain to have to implement during a trial. You're just trying to check out some tools and see how it might work for you. Also, if you've tried our tools in the past and then you download the newest version and you want to try it again, it's kind of inconvenient because your 14 days has run out and it's computer locked. Well, that's frustrating for you, and we understand that. So with the cloud shared system, this actually is much more simplified. We can simply mark the license as a trial. The tools work as they're supposed to for a set amount of time. If there's a need to extend minorly, we can do that. And as soon as you mark something, or as soon as you buy it and it's turned into a purchase license, all the features are unlocked. There's no extra changes from your management, no need to get a new license file and set that up in your environment. It just works. And that's what we're going for. Simple, easy, straightforward, just works. That's the goal. So you can be efficient and continue gaining the benefits of leveraging these tools. Now, we also wanted to modernize some of our licensing here, and this is kind of key. We're going to go through 3 topics here on modernization: licensing, purchasing, and I forget the third one. I'll come to that in a minute. So here's the truth about this. Most other software companies have left kind of this legacy standalone network licensing in the dust. They're kind of gone, right? We're all used to using Autodesk and Enscape to some degree, Adobe, Microsoft for sure. Of course, most of us personally have Netflix, Amazon, Dropbox, Disney, you name it. And these are all just a cloud-based licensing system, right? So most of those other systems, with the exception of 2 of them, I think, they're all named user though, right? Netflix named user, Amazon named user, Autodesk, of course, named user. They kind of pushed us into that. That's what they wanted to do. That's great. That's fine. because a lot of those things are kind of like constant use tools. In our case, with most of our suites, we're very intentionally, consciously not going to named user. This is a shared pool of products that for those that are not consistent use. Okay, now Hive is a consistent use tool. This means it's used all day long for browsing for content, finding it, dropping it in your projects. It's just open all the time. And for that reason, that tool is remaining named user. But the project manager batch suites, those are all what we're calling cloud shared, this new cloud-based licensing, which means you can share a pool of licenses. You can get one license shared between among, about 10 people. It's about the average for a single license of something like a project suite. And you don't have to buy more than that one license because it's shared. It's only checking or borrowing the license out when the tool's in use, and you'll see that in a minute here. We also wanted to modernize the purchasing process. I want to explain to you what the old process was, or kind of is if you're going to do some of the legacy style licensing still to this day. It's all a manual human touched process, okay? You get a PO, you sign it, send it back, we generate some information manually, enter it into the system, and then maybe generate a license file. That's all manual. But in this case, by leveraging the intelligence of this new portal, these new licenses can be purchased, renewed, fulfilled, in a lot of cases, in almost all cases, immediately. I had a guy this morning buy a license and instantly got that license associated to their account. There wasn't really a need for human interaction. It just saves time, okay? So you can have this instant access and instant insight on the current license quantities, renewal dates, costs. We want to make sure you know all that information up front. You don't have to necessarily contact anybody, sign into your portal, and you can see the data immediately. That's a big goal for us. You can also choose, just like we do for a lot of those other products and services like Disney and Amazon, right? You can auto-renew this if you want to. Switch that on. It's an option. It's not mandatory, but you can switch on auto-renew. And then that just means you never have to worry about interrupting anything, right? End of the year comes, you forget to renew, and all of a sudden the CTC tools don't work. That can be frustrating. You got to wait for a PO process to go through. That's not fun. So with this, you can just automatically turn that on if you want to, and then leverage that. So the automatic renewal notifications, upcoming renewals, they come to you, and if you have a relevant CTC partner in the US or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, they get notified so they can communicate with you as well in case you don't want to leverage that auto-renew process. But we want to make it much, much more automatic. Okay, final modernization step here is the pricing. And this is a big one. In the past, in the legacy pricing system, we had standalone, network, site, enterprise for the project manager and batch suites, and all of those had a maintenance cost on them as well. There was tiered user pricing for Hive. There was bulk pricing for the MEP Productivity Pack, Data Suite, Superdoor, Casework Config, maintenance with some of those without maintenance. And except for Hive, there's a different initial purchasing price versus the ongoing maintenance for these tools. And communicating all of this to you, well, that wasn't the most easy, and communicating it in a clear way, that it kind of was difficult for you to understand, difficult to navigate. So what we wanted to do here is move to a consistent pricing structure that's going to significantly reduce confusion, and on the case of our reseller partners, significantly reduce their training all around as well. So it's just easier to communicate a price. This is very modern. It's a true software as a service pricing system, and this removes all that confusion and frustration from all team members, you internally trying to communicate to your billing and purchasing teams, us communicating to you with our partners all around. We want this to just be easier. I'm going to show you a little bit about what you can discover about that pricing here in a minute, where you can see more information. And again, it's right there on our website, so I'll show you right where you can find that. But before I do that, I want to demonstrate a little bit about the cloud shared licensing directly in the CTC suites. So I have Revit open right here in the background, of course, why wouldn't I? And I'm going to go to my CTC software tab here. These are all the 23 tools installed. I'm in Revit 2020, it doesn't matter, it's still the 23.0 version of all of our tools. And I'm going to open up a tool. Let's say I open up something like Invisibility Advisor. Now, it doesn't really make sense to open it up in this particular view, but I'm going to open it up anyway. And of course, it went to a different screen. So give me a minute here as I maximize this and then drag it onto this correct screen over here. Now, it only takes a second to open it. and really for that matter, a second to close it as well. And let me pull Revit back to the foreground. So that's directly pulling cloud shared licensing. And what it's really doing is jumping out to the cloud over here. And if I was to, let's collapse and refresh this here, there we go. You'll notice that this license is now in use by me, and it tells me what computer I'm on and when I started it. And if I wanted to, I could revoke the license, and then, when the person goes back to try to use the tool again, if they were away from their computer, it would just check to see if they had an available license out of my available 8. And if I did, it would just reborrow the license automatically. Now, if it didn't have a license available, it would tell them they couldn't continue, of course, because that's just the way the shared licensing works. But I'm not reserving that license for that one person. It's not a named user getting this license, and when I close the tool down, it's just still checked out to me. No, it's set up so that when there's this pool of 8 licenses, 8 of us can be using it concurrently. And if any one of us shuts down, some other person could go use it. And that's the whole goal here. It's super streamlined and super straightforward. As soon as I'm leveraging these tools or closing those tools, then as soon as that license gets checked back in, let me refresh this here real quick. Yeah, it's gone. So now it's available for somebody else. So that's the big benefit of this pool of licenses. Just like network licensing, I can see what I've got. I can see when it's coming up for due. I can see how many are in use right now, and that just saves me headache and saves me time. So really, how does this work on the site? For those of you who want to try this like right away, you probably can. You have to get some cloud shared licensing or convert over to cloud shared licensing, but how would you allocate that? Now again, this section in 2 weeks, I'm doing a discussion to go very deep into all this allocation here, but I'm going to give you sort of a real quick broad stroke or broad brush stroke of how to do some of this administration. Back in the portal over here, one of the most important things that you can work with at the very top is users and groups. Now, in the case of my project suite license, I probably want everyone to get access to that. And so over here in groups, I would make a brand new group, which I already have, called everyone right here. And it's really all of my corporate Revit users. I just made a group and I threw a bunch of users into it. If I edit this group real quick, you'll notice that all of my users are kind of thrown into this one little bucket right here of everyone. Now, I also have a group that is like a BIM manager group. These might be the ones who gain access to things like the BIM manager suite. Well, if I edit this one, there's far fewer users in this list. There's just a handful of us who are admins of this particular collection of stuff. This might tie into HIVE, but it also ties in to my licensing. So then all I have to do in my licensing area when I have a cloud-based license, like with the project suite over here, is I can assign licenses to either individual users, not very efficient, or groups of users. And you'll notice here that I have my everyone group already allocated. I simply went to my select groups, I chose my everyone group, and they're now allocated licenses. They have the ability, if they're within this user group, to pull a project suite license. And then similarly here, if I go into my BIM manager suite, I can assign licenses here as well. And here you'll notice I have that BIM manager user group in my list. Anybody who's in this group has the ability to pull a BIM manager license. All right. Now there's of course going to be a question about, can I leverage my current in-company Active Directory with my already established user groups? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I encourage you to do that. We have a utility that's available called the Active Directory Account Synchronizer. And you can automatically bring in user groups, and all the users in those user groups, they can be defined in the users and groups area. That significantly reduces your administration time. And then when you get licenses, you just associate those user groups. And when IT decides to update user groups and which users are in those groups, and that gets resynchronized with the HIVE system, then it automatically is maintaining that for the end users as well. That same kind of stuff works just as easily for things like the HIVE CMS library management, project access, dashboard kind of graph data access. All that information is tied in directly to those users and groups. And so it's one central management portal for all of that, for your licensing, for the HIVE, for the users and groups. And yes, you can tie it in directly with your Active Directory at your firms. You can also do things with users and groups if you don't have a quality Active Directory or IT group to work with. You can do things like an Excel-based workflow or individual adding of users if you need to. But again, in our webinar in about 2 weeks, we're going to go really deep into this and talk about all that administration when the time is right there. So let me go through a couple of closing thoughts before we jump into the full kind of Q&A session. CTC has spent a lot of time this last year on purpose developing and building this new website and this new portal to provide as much value as we found that we could provide to you so that you gain all these benefits directly from us and get this streamlined workflow. This cloud shared licensing system is really at the core of all of this, again, by design. It's been developed by your request because you're frustrated, especially as many of us are working from home still. And we wanted to simplify your licensing, both standalone and network licensing, and save you time. There are a ton of advantages. I outlined them earlier. Hopefully you see a lot of that. And if you do have any questions outside of this discussion today, and you may very well, that's great. I encourage you to reach out to us directly if you need to, your CTC partner. Reach out, let's have a discussion about what this transition might look for you so you can start leveraging this cloud shared licensing yourself. So with that, I'm going to jump into questions in a minute here, but I do want to say thank you all for attending. We hope you found this valuable. For those of you who aren't going to stick around for the Q&A session, we hope that we'll see you in future webinars. We always enjoy the opportunity to interact with you live. For those of you who are going to hang out for the questions, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions window. And if you've got one queued up in your mind that you haven't thrown in yet, type it out now. I got a list of a couple here. I'm going to go through them. And if you've got questions, I'll get to yours kind of as I go down this list here. I did notice that some of you were mentioning that you may still be seeing the old website. And that's probably true. Oh yeah, I also saw somebody just mention about, you said you were going to go into pricing. I will do that in a minute here. I apologize. I didn't put a slide up for that, and I should have done that earlier. But some of you were seeing the old site, and that's because our web browsers have this wonderful thing built into them called caching. So you're probably just seeing sort of residual cache from you visiting our site recently. In a lot of cases, you can do like a Control-Shift-R refresh or a Shift-F5 refresh. That should do like a hard refresh on the site and give you the updated site directly. Some of us in the office had that this morning. Since this is very, very new, you may need to do a hard refresh. For those of you first time going there, you'll see the new site right away at ctcsoftware.com. If you continue to have that issue for whatever reason, reach out to us because we definitely want you to be seeing that new site. Now, there was a question here as well that I want to be very clear about. It was, with CSL, can users be set up one time? Not once for Hive and once for the BIM project suite, just set them up once. And I think I may have answered this, but I want to answer this again. Within the site, it's a single user and group configuration over here, and it affects both the licensing and the whole Hive CMS portion. And all of that can be tied in directly to the Active Directory synchronizer. And that Active Directory synchronizer tool specifically, I didn't mention this earlier, but it ties into whatever your AD authority is. If it's Azure AD, great, it can tie into that. If it's the local Microsoft Windows Server Active Directory, great, it can tie into that. It ties into either whichever one's doing your Active Directory control, it'll tie in automatically inherently to both. So that should just work seamlessly. And it's actually done that for years. So it's already there. For those of you who have been using Hive in the past, it should be the same exact tool working in exactly the same way. Okay. There was a question about why not go with named user. What really is the advantage of the cloud shared licensing versus named users? And for some of you, you're like, well, yeah, I like the fact that it's shared, but some of you, maybe you wanted it to be like named user. I mean, if you really wanted named user, you could go to your users and groups, or rather your licensing, and you could put specific named users in those licenses, but that's not really going to give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak. Ideally, you'd be sharing these licenses amongst any of your team members. saving you time and management. So it doesn't need to be a named user per license like a lot of other tools are. The cloud shared basically means if you had, again, a single license, let me go back to my licensing tab here, Manager Suite. I have 2 licenses available. If you remember from my group that I built, there was 3 names in that group. I've only got 2 licenses, but all 3 of those users can share that license, those 2 licenses, just by opening up a tool and checking that license out. It's like working with a library, right? You borrow a book, when you're done, you return it, and only you can use the book while you got it borrowed, kind of. That's kind of the same thing with these licenses. It really helps to make your licensing stretch further. I'm not trying to charge you tons and tons of dollars for this. I want you to gain benefits and get it for a reasonable price, right? That's the goal. You're successful, and as you grow, you'll need more. And then you'll come back to us for more in the future. That's kind of the goal. All right. Can the groups be set up to sync with Active Directory? I think I answered that already, but the answer is yes. You can sync the groups, and the users within the groups get synced as well. So it defines a group in the users and groups area, and it defines all the users within that group and manages their rights that way. There was a question about, can users be deleted permanently from Hive when they're no longer employed? Yes, they can. You can delete them. Now, we don't truly delete them because they have historic records. They had run searches, they had used licenses on computers, and so we don't truly delete them. What happens when you delete a user or when they get deleted through the Azure AD system is they go into a deleted bucket here that really can't be quote unquote emptied. They are deleted though. They're not just disabled. They are quote unquote deleted. Now you could technically re-enable them if they came back and their history would be there, but they do go into sort of an archival style deleted bucket so that their metrics, their data, your reporting doesn't get all kinds of screwed up because that user is gone. Their usage in the past was valid, and so they stay there because of that. But they're not in your face, right? The active users, the disabled users, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind when they're deleted, and that's kind of what happens when you delete a user. Okay. So let me get back onto this question that said, am I going to go into the pricing options? And since I have this up, I'll point this out right now. If you go to any of our product pages up here, let me go to the BIM project suite for 2023 here. Notice there's a pricing button over here. This exists on every product page, and it'll give you the pricing specific to that suite for a license on that suite. So in this case, the BIM project suite annual subscription, if you have anywhere between 1 to 15 users, the per user or per license cost of that is $410, and that's just a flat price. You need to get 5 users, it's 410 times 5. Next year, same thing. Year after that, same thing. It's not like this huge inflated upfront purchase price and a super small like ongoing annual subscription. It's just one price, easier to get in, consistent, easy to communicate. There's no like dual things here, buy at one price and maintenance and network activation. It's just one price. Now, if you have a greater number of users and you're in the 16 to 25 range, your per license cost goes down. So per license, per that pool of licensing, each license would cost $380 if you say bought 16 licenses. And if you're in the 25 or more range, it's $350 per license. So it goes down even more. So those of you who are large companies and want a huge number of licenses for your project suite for the rest of your team, you can get that, and that the volume discounts kind of do apply here. That's true on every one of the suites. Let's see here. There was a question about, are you able to limit access to specific tool features or buttons by user group? So that control, the ability to do that, that's actually a part of your installation where you have the ability to kind of limit what buttons showed up on the ribbon. You can still do that by Active Directory group. In the future, as we continue to build this site out, you'll actually start seeing some of those controls over here in this portal area, and it'll be more cloud managed. But initially, your install is going to be the same as it was before. Your controls are identical to what they were before. The difference, of course, is that the licensing portion of that happens from the cloud. So can they access a license tool in the project suite? That's on the licensing portion here. what actual buttons show up on their ribbon, that's controlled the same way that it has been for about 15 years. So that's the same in that installation control. And if you are interested in knowing more about that, let us know, and maybe we'll do a webinar on exactly that topic to talk about how to control button visibility in detail by Active Directory group. And there was a clarification that I saw somebody say that said under pricing, should not that say per license, not per user? You are correct. There is a kind of a naming convention here that we're going to be updating. This isn't a user named user license. It is per license or per active. My brain just went blank and I can't think of the term. Concurrent. That's the one. Concurrent user. So this could either say per concurrent user or per license. But yes, you are correct. This is per license. All right. Again, for those of you who may still be seeing the old site and it's not refreshing, a Control Shift R generally will let you do that. We'll let you get that to show up correct. You might also just quickly try leveraging like an incognito window and see if it refreshes for you. It might take just a little bit for your system to actually get that latest refresh. It has to trickle through the interwebs, and depending on what host, network, whatever you're kind of traveling through, they may have still cached some of our stuff. And so it might take a little bit to trickle through. You might even try a different browser, like try Edge or try Brave or Firefox or Mozilla or something like that, so that you can kind of see that new site if it hasn't already cached that information. But it should kind of trickle through for everybody. If you're still seeing it a little later on today, let us know. Shoot us a message. We want to make sure this is working for you. I'm not seeing any new questions roll through. Actually, there was a question about the SIM Manager Suite. Let me pull that up real quick, since somebody wanted to see that in particular, since your page is currently not refreshing. BIM Manager Suite, SIM Manager Suite, same pricing. One thing I do want to point out here in the Q&A session is you'll notice that the Revit tools are all released on 23, including Hive. The Civil tools over here, you'll notice, still indicate 2022. The 2023 tools for Civil 3D, the SIM Project and Manager Suites, those will be coming out early next week, okay? So keep your eyes out for that. But I will show you what the pricing is going to be. If I go here into the pricing portion, you'll notice that the SIM Manager Suite annual subscription, 1 to 15 users per license, $900. $830 for that next tier up and $770 for the tier above that. And for right now, because this here in particular, well, first of all, it's detected them in the US, so it's giving me an ATG rep, but this is still showing me some of the legacy license pricing because of this being in 2022 still. Once this goes 23, you'll notice that go away, and it will look very much, it will look exactly the same as the BIM Manager Suite pricing model. Identically here, 900, 830, 770. The pricing is the same between the two manager suites. So there you go. That's the pricing for BIM and SIM Manager Suite in that case. And there was a question, will these licenses work with the 2022 versions of our tools? And the answer is no, it will not. This is only the 23 tools and newer. So 23, 24, as we go into the future, it's going to continue using this. The 22 version of the tools will only work with the old legacy licensing system of Standalone and Network. If you want the 23 when it comes out, get it, and then yes, it will work with that shared license system. All right. Didn't see any additional questions come through. There was one that I'm going to handle offline directly with the end user. So we will we'll talk with them about that. Oh, there's a whole flood of questions coming in now again as well. Let me answer these, because if you're asking, I want to hang out and answer. Goodness, flood. Fantastic. Let's see. Will metrics, where'd that go? Will metrics, okay, here we go. Will metrics from the 2022 usage appear in your new dashboards? The answer is no. This is only tracking the metrics for these tools in 23 plus with the new cloud shared licensing system. Can you have multiple admins? And this is a fantastic question. The answer is yes. You can have as many admins as you need. There's no change in pricing, licensing, any of that. Your administration of the site is 100% up to you. If you need more than one admin or more than a couple of different admins of different roles, set them up. I have a couple of sessions in my HIVE admin series that talks about users and group administration. So if you're not using HIVE, you can still take a look at that particular session to know more about what kind of administration controls you have to set up. And in the session in 2 weeks, we'll be talking even more about the new controls with administration as well. But you can have as many admins as you need. And will there be an update from standalone to network license going to the cloud? An update. I'm assuming you mean upgrade, as in price change or something. The price is whatever the pricing is here. So if you want to start using cloud managed licensing, it's just that new pricing when you renew. But you can convert across from standalone or network to the cloud straight away if you want to commit to leveraging cloud-based licensing. That's very easy to do. Have a conversation with your reseller partner or with CTC directly, and we can help you along the lines of that transition. And there was a question about, can you get a download of the previous 22 metrics? We should probably talk about that a little bit offline to see what it is you're specifically looking for. Because in some cases, there might be, at least for HIVE, certainly some metrics that we can get. But if you weren't using HIVE, then there might not be the ability to get some of those metrics, but we can talk about that offline. Feel free to get a hold of us. All right. Let's see, when will the 2023 be available for download and install? Well, for the BIM Manager Project batch suites, they should be up right now for you. So you should have those available immediately. But you can try right now doing try the BIM Manager Suite free for 14 days, get the download from there. Or if you're buying new licensing, when you actually purchase it, it'll actually give you a download link there as well. But yeah, the try free gives you a download, and it's the same download for 23 that you would get for trial for the main tools. Again, there's no need to reinstall anything. I was mentioning earlier, it's all about simplicity and ease of use. I think HIVE is being uploaded here very shortly. So you'll notice the HIVE be able to go here pretty soon. All right. Very good. All right. Again, not seeing. Oh, also, by the way, you can always go in, and this was pointed out by one of my partner support specialists. You can always go into any one of the tools if they're already installed inside your Revit environment, like in suite settings or whatever. When you go to About, you can download the latest suite installer right from here as well, and this should also work to get you that latest installation if you already have our tools. So fantastic point there. You can definitely go get this pretty easily. All right. Very good. I don't see any more questions rolling through, so I'm going to shut this down for today. And once again, for those of you who were here till the end, thank you. We always appreciate when you participate with us. I love getting questions and being able to interact with you. It's one of the big reasons why we do these webinars live, so you get a chance to ask the questions that are meaningful to you. Certainly feel free to reach out to us, continue to get answers to questions you've got. Reach out to us, to our partners. You can go to our website to find out who they all are and how to contact them. And we would certainly love to hear from you about your thoughts and start helping you transition into this new cloud shared licensing system as soon as it's meaningful for you. Thank you all, and have a fantastic day.